Mexico is such an important problem. Mexican government's policies are pushing migration north. There isn't any sensible approach except to do what we need to do simultaneously, secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary in some places, and we need to have tougher employer sanctions, and we need to try to incentivize Mexico to do more. If they've committed transgressions of whatever kind, they should be obviously deported.
And bridges are better than walls.
So, yeah, we do need to have secure borders. And what that will take is a combination of technology and physical barriers.
But you want a wall then?
No, we've already...
You said that.
Well, I voted for border security, and some of it was a fence. I don't think we ever called it a wall. Maybe in some places it was a wall.
Instead of building walls, we're going to break down barriers and build ladders of opportunity and empowerment.
A combination of technology and physical barriers.
We're going to break down barriers.
Secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers.
And bridges are better than walls.
Maybe in some places it was a wall. But it was aimed at controlling our borders.
Well, look, I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. And I do think you have to control your borders.
Hey everybody, Josh Sayertson of World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by John Dowell, and we are going to break down a few reasons why Hillary Clinton is a complete hypocrite. And we could go over many other reasons, but we're going to stick to the wall for this video. So I'm going to start by saying a few quotes here. So Hillary Clinton said, "We can't be talking about building a wall or turning the clock back." Okay, so then she went on to say in November, which wasn't that long ago. I mean, people seem to forget things way too easily. A few months go by and they're like, what? That happened? Yeah. Well, no, this is now, that was then. But this is what she said in November in New Hampshire. She said, "Look, I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in, and I do think you have to control your borders." Of course, she said it in a much more annoying voice, like she's talking to a kindergarten class.
Upspeak.
Yeah, upspeak. And then in 2008, Clinton was asked about speeding up construction on a border fence. Her answer was, "Both Obama and I voted for that as part of the immigration debate. We were voting for the possibility that where it was appropriate and made sense, it would be considered." So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Just consider the wording there. So she's saying she wanted to vote for the possibility that it would be considered. Again, just, garbage. Everything she says is garbage. She voted for the Secure Fence Act, which was supposed to lead to 700 miles of two-layered fences. So not much different from a wall. So she said, in 2005, "I am adamantly against illegal immigrants. Clearly we have to make some tough decisions as a country, and one of them ought to be coming up with a much better entry and exit system so that if we're going to let people in for the work that otherwise would not be done, let's have a system that keeps track of them." So we're going to go into this a bit. Of course, like Clinton has also said that what Trump says about building a wall is a fantasy, as I think you've mentioned to me. She said that at a debate earlier this year. And isn't it interesting that she's calling out Donald Trump for being a racist and a xenophobe and all that kind of stuff, and that he hates Mexicans because he wants to build a wall. But then she's been voting for it for so long. It's like she's just trying to get the popular vote, which is obvious. Yeah. But it's like Bernie comes in and the popular tide changes and she says, "Now that's what I believe. I don't have any original opinions. I do what I need to do to get elected." What do you think about this situation, John?
I think you're absolutely right. Hillary Clinton doesn't have any real principles. She will say anything that her strategists and advisors tell her will help her get elected. Back in 2006, the Secure Fences Act, when she was voting on that, it was well inside the Overton window to be in favor of a wall or a fence. Mm-hmm. There was bipartisan support for securing the border, and now it's the new talking point is that trying to have any sort of border at all is racist, and that the United States needs to just let anybody who wants to come in, come in. And now she's pandering to that talking point in her rhetoric towards Trump, while still on the campaign trail back in November, acknowledging that she's been in favor of offense in the past.
Yeah.
She just doesn't talk about that very loudly, but if you bring it up, she'll say, well, yeah, sure. You know, I think a fence is okay, but a wall, that's crazy.
And it's more of this Pepsi versus Coke kind of mentality, the left and the right paradigm. And of course, I mean, I'm an ANCAP, I'm a voluntarist, I have many conflicting viewpoints about a wall, but when we're looking at this situation, it just seems like she'll only follow what will get her elected at that time. So if the Democrats are for a wall, she'll be for it. If the Democrats are against a wall, she'll be against the wall. And I've noticed that it also kind of comes into play with the fact that Eric Holder, who she was working with at the Obama administration, was behind arming and funding these Mexican drug cartels, Operation Fast and Furious, folks, look it up. And then at that time she's for building a wall, and now that all these Mexican drug cartels are like moving into the United States, into small towns, because it's easy for us to say one thing up here in Canada, it's another thing for people down in the States living along the Mexican border. But now all these drug cartels are going through Texas, going through Arizona, and you know, all these guys have American CIA weapons, and now she's against it. It just seems like she's only for pure chaos and divide. Like, that's all I can see out of this. And of course Trump is very similar in that sense. Of course he's flip-flopped on everything you can imagine. But the fact is, Hillary Clinton has got to be one of the most fake politicians I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, she was against gay marriage, now she's for it, and says that it's a mischaracterization that she was ever against it. She's always wanted to portray herself as this little peace activist from the 60s, even though she voted in favor of the authorization for the use of military force in Iraq.
Yeah, and then on top of that, she calls herself a feminist at the same time as looking the other way when her husband obviously rapes people. And I say that with the possibility of a slander suit, because that wouldn't be so bad. He would have to prove it in a court of law, which he would have to prove me wrong, which he won't be able to do, because there are dozens of women that have come out against him.
He's paid them off, some of them.
Yeah, and he's talking about how our children matter, yet she freed like pedophiles from charges against, you know, where they've raped little kids. And it's just, this woman is one of the biggest fakes I've ever seen in American politics. And again, I say that with a heavy heart, because it's saying a lot. And of course she's a puppet. Of course she's a puppet of the establishment. Of course she is only answering to her donors and the hidden influences within the government and monetary system, and that goes for like the Saudi royal family that supports her, the big banks, and further upon that, Goldman, and then like the Federal Reserve, and then the shadow banking system, that global banking system. But it's so ridiculous. I wanted to talk about this because it's just so ridiculous how easy this person is to debate, to argue about, because
to expose,
to expose, because she has openly exposed herself for 50 years.
It's pretty insane when you think that to the average person who doesn't maybe know a lot about the issues at play in this election, the number one thing that everyone's focusing on, the main talking point, is Donald Trump is crazy and racist because he wants a wall. And then his main competitor, Hillary Clinton, has actually voted as a senator to build a big two-layered fence.
Yeah, it's a two-layered fence
along most of the border. They didn't want to build it along the entire border, so somehow that's not a crazy fantasy like something that goes along the entire border, because there's a huge difference.
Well, and I mean, when she was talking to Ramos from Telemundo, she was saying to him, well, it's not a wall, it's a fence. But if you look at the documentation, it's a two-layer fence with barbed wire. It's pretty much the same thing.
It's slightly more half-assed than a giant wall.
I guess people, when they think of a wall, they think of concrete or brick, but isn't a metal wall still a wall? It's not like it's a chain link fence that you can break open.
A wall has more emotional baggage.
Oh, yeah.
I guess people start thinking of Pink Floyd.
And they
Pink start thinking of the Berlin Wall.
I'm wearing a Pink Floyd shirt. But it's funny though, because it's literally just working on people's emotions. People go, well, I don't agree with that because it's racist and xenophobic.
Mm-hmm.
How? Like, once again, I'm a voluntarist. I have many holdbacks about this whole situation. But at the same time, it's like, how is it racist?
Well,
it is a nationality. It's not a race. It's not about Mexicans. It's about these drug cartels that are right over the border. It's the same thing as Germany. Look at what's happening in Germany. Look at what's happening in France. I mean, it's just, why can't, if we're going to have nationalism, which I'm not necessarily for, I'm for individualism and voluntarism, but if we're going to have nationalism, how about we make it national and not globalist, where there's no borders, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
That's what's frustrating to me about the whole issue, is that while we're voluntarists and we understand the idea that human freedom of movement is a good thing and that these borders are artificial lines on a map that no one necessarily consented to, and there's all kinds of issues with borders. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's crazy when you think about the fact that the United States has troops in almost every country in the world, and that's not an election issue. Pulling them out of all their foreign military outposts, or pulling the U.S. back from being this huge presence in places like the South China Sea or things like that. There's no talking points about that. I mean, there's been some non-interventionist talking points from Trump, although they're mixed in with a lot of vague America first, make America big and great again generalities, to the point where you can't really see what his foreign policy would actually be like. Occasionally he'll make these good points about how the Iraq War or the Libya War was a total mess and a big disaster. But then other times you just have no idea of what he'd be like.
A huge mistake. And look, and frankly, but seriously though, I mean, with the war in Iraq, that's a great example of, with all these troops stationed all over the world. So they're protecting all these borders, not even protecting them. They're like intimidating. Like Iran is like surrounded by borders on the outside of their country's borders. And they're just surrounded by soldiers, surrounded by bases. And we see no one protecting their own national borders.
That's the point that I was coming to a little too roundaboutly there. Yeah, the one place that they don't protect is their own border. And the craziest part about it is that it's one thing when an anarcho-capitalist or a voluntarist or even an international communist or somebody is against borders, because it's actually consistent with their ideology. But the people who are against protecting the American border and just want unlimited amounts of people to come in are also the biggest statists. Yeah. So they're giant statists, and they think the state should give you everything for free college.
Yeah. Look, it's that old saying, like, it's a freedom for one to bring their body where they so choose. That is their freedom. That is their individual right. However, when it impedes on other people collectively, where the government forces everyone into this group and says, you have to pay for these people because we as a state are going to bring them in, and we as a state are going to give them the welfare, and we're going to make you pay for it.
Then it's unfair.
Yeah, so it sounds bad when they say, we're going to build a wall and we're going to make Mexico pay for it, but it doesn't seem to sound bad to people when they say, we're going to bring in like a bunch of drug cartels and then make you pay for it collectively. I mean, there has to be a middle ground here where we respect freedom of movement and freedom of the individual, but at the same time, we don't collectively force everyone to pay for other people's mistakes. And we're not saying Mexicans are bad. No, we're not saying Hispanics are bad. It just doesn't make any sense with what we're trying to say. Is that, well, what I wanted to kind of say is that there are literally countless U.S. armed, CIA armed, Operation Fast and Furious again, militants and cartels that are walking over into the United States, raping women and children, killing people, and to ignore that is borderline mental illness. It's absurd to not focus on real issues, and that goes from both sides. That's why the left and the right is wrong to an extent, where we have to get that middle ground where it respects individual freedom and nothing else and nothing less.
Exactly. I mean, there's many great, hardworking people that make the trip up to the United States and also Canada because they just want to send back money to their families. And I've worked with a bunch of those people. I actually used to work with tons of undocumented people when I lived in Quebec, fruit picking, and they're some of the hardest working people I've ever met. So if you think about taking these immigration issues down to more of an individual level, at the voluntarist level, like you're talking about, if people can come here and not cause any problems and they just want to work, I mean, there is the issue of the fact that there's already a lot of unemployment with the existing populations and jobs are being taken away. But as a free market person and someone who believes in freedom of movement, I don't have a problem with if somebody can get up here and work. Good for them is what I say. If you are an actual criminal that just wants to come to the United States just to take advantage of the system and in a lot of cases go on welfare and get better benefits than you would if you're an American citizen and then commit a bunch of crimes, people are rightly not so happy about that. And it is a major problem in a lot of American cities. I mean,
let's go to Germany and just start a big drug cartel there. Well, people would be right to be like, no, that's a bad idea. I'm not going to let you do that. But and of course that violates the non-aggression principle by even doing that in the first place and targeting these people. But at the same time, I know so many people who've come from places like Cuba where the government is going in the direction of, or the U.S. government is going in the direction of, complete socialism, complete control, collectivist control structure based on a monetary enslavement and regulatory enslavement. And rightly so, a lot of people are trying to escape those countries into more free countries. And while the U.S. is far from free, it's a lot freer than Cuba. It's just what they've done as war criminals and what they've done across the world and what they've done with their monetary system and the global control of the world currency situation with the U.S. dollar. That's a big problem. But we also have to look at why there are so many Mexicans getting hired over, say, white people that are born in the United States. If they're working cheaper, why are so many jobs being outsourced to these countries around the world? It's because the system in the United States, with the over-the-top regulatory system that is, and the taxation system that's pushing businesses underground, they're forced to do this. They're forced to do that in order to make more money because they are being infringed upon by the government, by the state, and by this crazy control system. So instead of looking at solutions to further the problem, why don't we look at solutions to fix the problem? So that instead of saying, well, why are these Mexicans coming over here and working for cheap, and why are these businesses hiring these Mexicans for cheaper? It's because they are willing to do the job for cheaper because the businesses can't afford to pay better wages to people because they are burdened by this taxation and regulatory system that is the reason why there's huge monopolies, and those monopolies are powered by government intervention, where we have these giant government monopolies that are controlling these the private sector. So people say, well, we need more regulations to stop the monopolies, but the regulations are creating the monopolies. And then we look at all these businesses like Walmart that wouldn't be able to be as big and not have such little competition if there was actually open door for smaller businesses where businesses can pay their employees more freely without the government forcing them to. They would be taxed less, their capital would be better, their competition would be better, and therefore they'd be able to hire more employees, hire more people for higher wages, and it would just be such a better system. But instead we just look at little things like, well, these Mexicans are coming over the border and taking our jobs. Well, why? Why is that happening?
And it also has to do with, I totally agree with you that there are a lot of businesses that are finding it hard to do business in the States, and they're looking for the cheapest labor they can find. But there's also a lot of huge multinationals in the States that could afford to pay good wages to American workers, but just don't want to. And of course, they're part of the lobbying effort for open borders. I mean, there's two main reasons why the Democrats and the neocons want open borders so badly. It has nothing at all to do with caring about Central American people or Chinese people, for that matter. We can't forget that tons of people are coming in from China right now as well. It's getting to be almost as big of a thing as the Latin American immigration, which almost no one talks about, but that's for another video. But the reason they want open borders clearly has nothing to do with caring about people, or the same Obama administration that loves open borders wouldn't be giving arms to Mexican drug cartels. They're helping make Mexico a terrible place that people want to flee, and the CIA is involved in those drug cartels for decades. They're helping create this storm of violence there.
And not only that, but bringing over like the heroin trade from overseas in Afghanistan. And then, like as you mentioned there, like the neocons and the leftists are both pushing this idea of open borders and globalism. And you know, it's because they don't care about the individuals. They're all surface, no substance. They want to look good while enslaving people further and collectivizing people further and having a bigger control structure. And the joke's on you, good people, because they are using your emotions and your kindness, which everyone should be kind, but it's the fact that we shouldn't be, you know, pushing towards more collectivist control, because that's the opposite of kind, under the veil, the thin veil of unity. And these guys are pushing with the veil of kindness to control you more and to be able to collectivize people better in order to enslave people better. And I mean, that's the whole thing with the people in Mexico as well. I mean, look what they've done. They've purposely destroyed their society. And you can even go back to Operation Condor back in the 70s, where they were creating false flags and destroying the streets of Chile and Argentina. And these people are still suffering to this day because of it. There's hundreds of thousands misplaced. And I mean, these guys have been creating this issue for so long, all to lead up to today. And we are here. And are we going to do anything about it? Are we going to stand still and let it happen and pretend that we care while not actually understanding the issue? Or are we going to look into it? Are we going to study what the facts are going back all these decades and stand up as individuals, as free human beings, and say, enough is enough. Stop using us in order to create your control structure. We are not your pawns to be sacrificed for the king and the queen. And I can't tell people that enough. And now this video is of course going quite long, but I wanted to kind of go into this a bit because it's been such an important issue. This election is, they've been, you know, the left-right paradigm has been getting more and more exposed. And I think we need to capitalize on this situation where people are waking up in order to tell people, look, Clinton is one of the most openly corrupt politicians that ever lived. Donald Trump's a blowhard. Donald Trump might not be establishment as far as we might be concerned, but it doesn't make him right. And he is, of course, part of the business establishment. He's not part of the political establishment. And the fact of the matter is, just because someone's going against the tide doesn't mean they're right. A shark can go against the tide. They're known to go against the tide, but that doesn't mean that they're going to treat you nicely, you know?
We all love to see him. All of those of us who can't stand Hillary Clinton love to see him rip on her and say that she should be locked up, because she absolutely should. She's a war criminal.
Lock her up.
Absolutely destroyed the entire nation of Libya as Secretary of State.
Helped arm ISIS.
Warmongering. She's a terrible person, and she really should be locked up, but
we saw, he died.
That doesn't mean that the enemy of my enemy is necessarily my friend, as they say. And what I want to add in this video, too, is that I think it's as you were saying before, it is really, really good to have compassion and to care about people living in third world countries. And I'm really glad that so many people have compassion for people that are trying to flee Mexico or El Salvador or any of these places. But let's move towards a world where those countries can get better through voluntarism and free markets and the people there having a voice, instead of a lot of these US-backed regimes that rule a lot of these banana republics.
And then create the problem reaction solution and create this crazy kind of deceptive veil for the populace that are watching the mainstream media.
Because it's not only having a lot of bad effects on the United States, this almost uncontrollable flow of people. It's also really having a lot of bad effects on Central America, and it's actually deeply, deeply irresponsible for the Obama administration to be saying, hey, just come to America, you'll get everything for free, you can be a dreamer, you can get free college. They're encouraging people to send their small children on a huge, dangerous train ride up through Mexico.
Up abandoned at the border.
A lot of them end up dead trying to make the trip. It's incredibly irresponsible to encourage this. And there's just so many crazy safety issues with this in general, like all the people with tuberculosis that are coming into the United States now. And in the same country where you get patted down at TSA checkpoints just driving down the highway in areas now, or get groped at the airport.
Attack the American people, attack the people living within the country, but the people outside, let's just bring them in and give them taxpayer money.
Hyper security theater with the DHS, and there's a terrorist under every bed when it's convenient to taking away American people's rights. But then if you just have TB and you just want to stumble across the border and go spread TB to the United States, they don't even care about those kind of major health risks. Like, where's the CDC on that? They're, I guess, too busy probably developing bioweapons to...
And then developing diseases so that they can release it on the public in order to create another vaccine to get rid of it and get the American public's money. It's all a big scam, folks.
The whole thing is just so transparent. I mean, there's two clear reasons why they want open borders. It's Cloward and Piven. They want to bring in a huge socialist voting bloc, which I think is kind of backfiring against them, because they're finding that a lot of the Hispanic people that are coming in actually support Trump once they come to the United States, you know. And also, you know, they want cheap labor, as we were talking about before. So the corporations that are lobbying for bringing in tons of people to provide cheap labor, a lot of those are the same ones that are, you know, supporting these media organizations and buying ads from them.
And then the Pope says you can't build a wall, real Christians or whatever can't build a wall while the Vatican's surrounded by a wall. This is all a big, gigantic joke. So people, please listen up. Please heed the warning. We can't make it more clear. We will get back to doing more of this in the coming weeks, because, of course, this is becoming more and more of a prevalent issue. We're on the precipice of a major revolution or evolution or change in the popular culture within society, and it's best that we capitalize it for the message of freedom the best that we can. So share this video around, check the links below. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and of course worldalternativemedia.com. Please donate. We can't do it without you. We do not make any money at this. So check the links below, GoFundMe and Patreon. And we thank you for watching. We'll be back at you with much more. This is Josh Sigurdsson, John signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.